I'm Brianna Miller, 28 years old, standing outside my sister Heather's wedding venue with my heart pounding against my ribs. 10 years ago, my family disowned me, the ugly duckling who embarrassed them at every turn. They never expected to see me again, certainly not as the woman I am today. My sister's face when she spotted me across the room? Priceless. Her new husband had no idea who I was, which made what happened next even sweeter. Before I tell you how my family reacted when they finally recognized me, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button and join me as I reveal how I went from family outcast to the person they never thought I could become. Growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut meant something specific. It meant wealth, status, and most importantly to my parents, appearances. Our colonial-style house, with its manicured lawn and perfect white picket fence, mirrored what my parents wanted our family to be: flawless. My mother, Catherine Miller, was the quintessential socialite, always dressed in designer clothes, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her smile practiced to perfection for country club gatherings. My father, Richard Miller, was a prominent investment banker whose greatest pride seemed to be the connections he maintained and the impression his family made on others. Then there were us kids, my older sister Heather and me. From the beginning, the contrast between us was stark and never went unnoticed. Heather was blessed with our mother's natural beauty. Tall, slender, with flowing blonde hair and bright blue eyes that charmed everyone she met. She was the perfect daughter in every way: homecoming queen, straight-A student, tennis team captain. When Heather walked into a room, people noticed. My parents beamed with pride whenever she accomplished anything, from winning the science fair to being asked to prom by the quarterback. I, on the other hand, was the disappointment. While Heather flourished, I struggled with severe acne that covered my cheeks and forehead, metal braces that made me self-conscious about smiling, and 20 extra pounds that made me hide in baggy clothes. My mousy brown hair never seemed to style right, and my glasses were constantly sliding down my nose. At family functions, relatives would gush over Heather, then turn to me with that pitying look that said everything without words. "Brianna, why can't you put some effort into your appearance like your sister?" my mother would ask while applying her lipstick before parties. First impressions are everything in this world. My father was less direct but equally damaging. "Your sister's already been accepted to 3 Ivy League schools," he'd comment over dinner. "What are your plans again?" This despite my straight as in advanced math and science courses that never seemed to register with him. The constant comparisons were relentless. "Look at how Heather carries herself," my mother would say. Or, "Notice how everyone gravitates to your sister?" That's social intelligence. The message was clear. I was lacking in ways that mattered to them. There were rare moments of normalcy, brief glimpses of what a supportive family could be. Like when my father taught both of us to swim one summer, patiently guiding me through my fear of deep water. Or Christmas mornings when status and appearances temporarily faded into the background. These memories somehow made everything worse. They showed me what we could have been if appearances hadn't mattered so much. School wasn't much better. While Heather collected friends effortlessly, I found myself eating lunch alone, buried in books about computer programming and technology. Something about coding spoke to me. In that world, what mattered was your skill and logic, not how you looked or who your family was. I started teaching myself to code when I was 14, creating simple games and websites in my bedroom while Heather hosted sleepovers downstairs. "Nobody cares about computers, Brianna," my mother said once, finding me hunched over my laptop at midnight. "You should be focusing on social skills. That's what will get you ahead in life." The one person who saw me differently was my grandmother Eleanor. Unlike my parents, Grandma Eleanor valued substance over style. During summer visits to her modest home in Vermont, I could breathe. She listened to my excited explanations about coding projects with genuine interest. "You have a brilliant mind, Brianna," she told me once, her weathered hand squeezing mine. Some people won't see it because they're blinded by the surface. but never doubt your worth. Those summers with Grandma Eleanor were like oxygen, sustaining me through the suffocation of life at home. She showed me old photographs of herself as a young woman, plain by conventional standards, but with a fierce intelligence in her eyes. Beauty fades, she'd say, but brilliance only grows stronger with time. I clung to those words during family dinners when conversation revolved around Heather's latest achievement or beauty tip, my presence barely acknowledged. I retreated further into my world of coding, finding solace in a place where I could create something valuable regardless of my appearance. Little did I know then how prophetic my grandmother's words would be, or how drastically my life was about to change. High school was where the contrast between Heather and me became a canyon too wide to cross. While she floated through the hallways surrounded by admirers, I became invisible, or worse, a target. Ridgeview High operated on the same currency as my home, appearances and social status. I had neither. My junior year, the bullying escalated from whispers to outright cruelty. A group of girls led by Heather's friend Amanda started a Brianna Watched social media account, posting unflattering photos of me with brutal captions. The worst part wasn't the strangers who laughed, it was seeing my sister's username in the list of followers. "It's just a joke, Brianna," Heather said when I confronted her, rolling her eyes. "You're so sensitive about everything. Maybe if you made an effort with your appearance, people would treat you differently." Her words echoed our mother's perfectly. I wondered if she even realized it. The pinnacle of humiliation came during Heather's graduation party. My parents had transformed our backyard into a magazine-worthy celebration space with fairy lights, catered food, and even a small band. Everyone who mattered in Greenwich was there to celebrate the Golden Daughter's achievement. I had spent hours getting ready, attempting to tame my frizzy hair and cover my acne with makeup. I'd even bought a new dress, navy blue with small white flowers, that I thought looked nice on me. For once, I wanted to feel like I belonged in my own home. I was standing near the punch bowl when I overheard Amanda and her friends. "God, what is she wearing?" "It's like she doesn't even try," Amanda snickered. "Imagine having to bring her to college visits," another girl said. "I'd die if people thought we were related." Then came Heather's voice, slightly lower but unmistakable. "You guys, stop. It's not her fault she got the bad genes." They all erupted in laughter, not noticing I was just feet away. The punch cup shook in my hand as tears threatened to spill. But the worst came next. My mother walked up to their circle, catching the tail end of their conversation. Instead of defending me, she smiled tightly and said, "Heather, sweetheart, the Andersons just arrived. Come say hello." Not a word about their cruelty. Not even an acknowledgement that I existed. I retreated to my bedroom and cried until my eyes were swollen. That night crystallized everything. I would never be good enough for this family as I was. Despite the emotional turmoil, I threw myself into academics with renewed fervor. If I couldn't be beautiful by their standards, I would be brilliant. My coding projects grew more sophisticated, earning recognition from my computer science teacher, Mr. Lambert, who encouraged me to apply to top tech programs. "You have a natural talent for this," he told me. "Stanford's computer science program would be lucky to have you." When the acceptance letter from Stanford arrived, complete with a partial scholarship, I was ecstatic. For once, I had achieved something even Heather hadn't. She had settled for Yale, my father's alma mater. I imagined, foolishly, that this might finally earn their respect. I presented the acceptance letter at dinner, my hands trembling with excitement and nervousness. "Stanford?" my father said, barely glancing at the letter. "That's in California. So far away." "They have the best computer science program in the country," I explained. "And they're offering me a scholarship." "Partial scholarship," my mother corrected, frowning. "We'd still have to pay quite a bit." "It's an investment in my future," I said, the words sticking in my throat. My father set down his fork. "Brianna, let's be realistic. College is expensive, and we need to prioritize investments that will pay off." "What does that mean?" I asked, though deep down, I already knew. It means, my mother interjected, that we need to consider the likelihood of success. Heather has clear potential. She's socially adept, presents herself well, has the right connections through her sorority. These things matter in the real world. And my academic achievement doesn't? My voice cracked. Don't be dramatic, my father sighed. We're simply saying that investing in your sister's law school makes more financial sense than sending you across the country for a computer hobby. It's not a hobby. I've been accepted to one of the best programs in the world. I protested, tears beginning to fall. Brianna, my mother said coldly, looking at you now, emotional, disheveled, making a scene. Do you really think you're prepared for the professional world? You can barely make it through a family dinner. The words struck like physical blows. But what came next was the final cut. Let's be honest, my father said. You're the ugly duckling of this family, and no college degree is going to change that. In our world, presentation matters. Connections matter. You simply don't have what it takes. The room fell silent. Even Heather looked uncomfortable. Richard, my mother murmured, not in objection to his cruelty, but to his bluntness. I stood up slowly, legs shaking. So that's it? I'm not worth investing in because I'm not pretty enough. We're being practical, my father replied. Maybe try community college first, see if you can improve yourself. I left the table without another word, locking myself in my bedroom. Through my tears, I made a decision. I would never beg for their approval again. The next day, Grandma Eleanor called, somehow sensing something was wrong. When I told her everything through sobs, she was silent for a long moment. Pack your things, she finally said. Come to the bank tomorrow at noon. I have something for you. She had been saving for years. She told me the next day as she handed me a cashier's check for $20,000. I always knew you might need an escape fund, she said, her eyes fierce with love. This was meant for my retirement, but you need it more. Go to California. Become who you're meant to be. I hugged her, both of us crying. I'll pay you back every penny, I promised. Just succeed, she whispered. That's all the repayment I need. 2 days later, I left with one suitcase and my laptop. I didn't say goodbye to my parents or Heather. Instead, I left a note, going to become someone you'll regret dismissing. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. Seattle in September was nothing like Connecticut. The constant drizzle seemed fitting for my mood as I settled into the cheapest apartment I could find, a tiny studio with a hot plate instead of a kitchen, shared with 2 other girls in a building that smelled perpetually of damp laundry. Stanford had been the dream, but reality had different plans. The University of Washington had offered me a last-minute spot with a decent financial aid package when I explained my situation. Those first months tested every ounce of my resolve. I worked mornings at a coffee shop, evenings waiting tables, and weekends doing data entry, all while carrying a full-course load in computer science. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Some nights, curled on my thin mattress with the sounds of the city filtering through paper-thin walls, I wondered if my father had been right. Maybe I didn't have what it takes. My roommates, Lynn, a biochemistry major, and Dakota, an art student, became my first friends by proximity rather than choice. They witnessed my darkest moments, like when I got the call that my partial tuition payment was due and I was still $1,000 short. You've barely eaten all week, Lynn observed, pushing a plate of her homemade dumplings toward me as I calculated my finances for the 100th time. I'm fine, I insisted, though my stomach growled in betrayal. Take the food, Dakota said firmly. And take this. She handed me a flyer for a coding competition with a $2,000 prize. Your weird robot programs are good. You should enter. I almost didn't. The voice in my head, sounding suspiciously like my mother's, kept whispering that I would embarrass myself. But desperation proved stronger than doubt. The competition required creating an algorithm for optimizing urban traffic flow. I worked on it for 72 straight hours, fueled by vending machine coffee and determination. When I presented my solution, my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my laptop. But as I explained my approach, something strange happened. People listened. The judges asked questions that indicated genuine interest, not pity or dismissal. I didn't win first place, but my third place finish came with a $1,000 prize and something far more valuable, validation from people who understood the field. One of the judges, Professor Morgan, approached me afterward. "Your solution showed remarkable insight," she said, her gray eyes sharp behind round glasses. "Especially for a freshman. Are you planning to specialize in algorithm development?" For the first time, someone was asking about my mind, not my appearance. The sensation was so novel it took me a moment to respond. Professor Morgan became my mentor, recommending me for research assistantships and introducing me to her contacts in Seattle's growing tech scene. Under her guidance, I began to see my potential through her eyes rather than my family's. "The tech industry needs minds like yours," she told me during one of our weekly meetings. "Creative, resilient, and unafraid to challenge conventional approaches." By the end of my first year, I had secured a summer internship at a small security software company. The pay wasn't much, but the experience was invaluable. I felt myself growing not just as a programmer, but as a person. For the first time, I was in an environment where my appearance was irrelevant compared to what I could create. My social circle expanded gradually, introducing me to people who valued substance over style. My study group, Aiden, Zoe, and Marcus, became true friends who never made me feel self-conscious about my looks or background. With them, I could simply be Brianna the coding whiz, not Brianna the family disappointment. "You think differently than anyone I've ever met," Aiden told me once as we tackled a particularly challenging assignment. "It's like your brain finds pathways the rest of us don't even see." Physical changes came slowly, almost without my noticing. The constant stress that had exacerbated my acne began to ease as I found my place. Walking everywhere because I couldn't afford bus fare toned my body naturally. One day, Dakota insisted on cutting my hair, transforming my unruly mane into a stylish bob that actually suited my face shape. "See," she said, spinning me toward the mirror. "You were hiding behind all that hair." I barely recognized myself, not because I had suddenly become beautiful by conventional standards, but because confidence had begun to illuminate my features from within. During my junior year, I met Jordan at a hackathon. Tall with kind brown eyes and a quick laugh, he was the first person who made my heart race for reasons that had nothing to do with anxiety. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared interests. "I like how your mind works," he told me on our third date, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear with a gentleness that made me shiver. "You see solutions where others see obstacles." The first time we kissed, standing on the rooftop of his apartment building with Seattle's skyline glittering around us, I felt a healing I hadn't known I needed. Here was someone who saw me, really saw me, and liked what he saw. My graduation came with highest honors and multiple job offers. Professor Morgan beamed like a proud parent as I crossed the stage. My roommates cheered loudly enough to make up for the absence of family. I had done it, transformed from the girl who wasn't worth investing into a woman with a future bright enough to require sunglasses, as Dakota joked. The only shadow on this new life was news from my grandmother's neighbor. Eleanor had passed away peacefully in her sleep. The woman who had believed in me when no one else did hadn't lived to see my success. I cried for days, grief mixing with guilt that I hadn't visited more often. She knew. Jordan comforted me. People who love us that way always know. What stung almost as much as her loss was discovering that no one in my family had thought to contact me. I learned of her death through a Facebook message from her neighbor, not from my parents or sister. The final proof, if I needed it, that I had been truly erased from the family narrative. As I stood in my cap and gown, diploma in hand, I made a silent promise to my grandmother, Her investment in me would continue to grow. This was just the beginning. My career began at Vertex Security, a mid-sized cybersecurity firm in Seattle. I started as a junior developer, one small cog in a large machine, but I was determined to make an impact. The tech industry, I quickly discovered, could be as appearance-focused as Greenwich Society, just with different metrics. Here, women were often judged not by their beauty, but by whether they fit the programmer stereotype. My gender made me an outlier. My innovative thinking made me a threat to some. Your approach is interesting, but unnecessarily complex, a senior developer named Greg commented during my first code review, despite my solution being more efficient than the standard approach. It became a pattern, my ideas dismissed, my contributions minimized. Instead of retreating, I channeled my grandmother's resilience. I documented everything, built flawless test cases, and let results speak for themselves. 6 months in, I identified a critical vulnerability in our flagship product during an internal security audit. This could potentially expose client data, I explained in the team meeting, presenting my findings methodically. I've developed a patch that addresses it without compromising performance. The room fell silent. The CTO, Rachel Chin, studied me with newfound interest. Implement it, she said simply. And I want you on the security audit team moving forward. That moment marked a turning point. Under Rachel's mentorship, I flourished. She taught me not just technical skills, but how to navigate corporate politics, lessons my family's social training could never have provided. In this industry, you'll always face resistance, she told me over coffee one morning. Some because you're young, some because you're a woman. Your job isn't to make them comfortable, it's to be so good they can't ignore you. By my second year, I was leading a small team developing new security protocols. By the third, I had been promoted twice and earned a reputation as a rising star in Seattle's tech community. My salary had increased enough to afford a comfortable apartment with a view of Puget Sound, a far cry from my first cramped studio. Then came the breakthrough that would change everything. While working on a client's ransomware recovery, I identified patterns that led me to develop a new algorithm for predictive threat detection. What began as a specific solution evolved into a revolutionary approach to cybersecurity, one that could identify potential attacks before traditional systems even recognized a threat. This isn't just an improvement, Rachel said after reviewing my work. This is a paradigm shift. Vertex wanted to integrate my algorithm into their existing products, offering me a bonus and a promotion. But something in me, the same instinct that had propelled me out of Connecticut, knew this was bigger than one company's product line. With Rachel's reluctant blessing and Jordan's enthusiastic support, I took the biggest risk of my life. I left Vertex to found Sentinel Shield, my own cybersecurity startup built around my predictive security framework. The early days were terrifying, my savings depleted by legal fees and initial development costs, my dining table serving as both office and meeting space. Jordan, now working as a UX designer, contributed countless hours helping design the user interface. My former roommate Lynn introduced me to her cousin, a venture capitalist who specialized in tech startups. Aiden and Marcus from my study group joined as my first employees, working for equity when I couldn't yet afford competitive salaries. We believe in what you're building, Marcus told me when I expressed guilt about the arrangement. And in who's building it. Our first major client came through Professor Morgan's network, a financial services company tired of reactive security measures. Their adoption of our platform led to others, each success building our reputation. Within 18 months, Sentinel Shield had grown from a concept to a company with 20 employees and a real office. Tech publications began to take notice. Security's New Frontier, How Brianna Miller is Revolutionizing Cyber Defense, read the headline of an industry magazine feature. The article included a professional photograph of me looking confident in a blazer, standing before a wall of monitors, a far cry from the insecure girl my family had dismissed. The morning the article was published, I received an email from a distant cousin, saw your feature in Tech Innovators. Is that really you? Everyone here is talking about it. Everyone. The word hung in my mind. Did that include my parents, who had deemed me unworthy of investment? My sister, who had stood by silently during my rejection? The cousin didn't say, and I didn't ask. Instead, I channeled my energy into growing Sentinel's Shield. Our second round of funding valued the company at $40 million, a figure that still seemed surreal to me. I was now the CEO of a rising tech company, with a team that respected me and clients who sought my expertise. Personal growth paralleled my professional success. Therapy helped me process the trauma of my family's rejection. You've built yourself from the ground up, Dr. Bailey observed during one session. But there's still a part of you waiting for their approval. She was right. Despite everything, some childish part of me still craved validation from the people who had hurt me most deeply. It was my most closely guarded vulnerability, one I admitted only to Jordan and Dr. Bailey. Jordan had become my rock, his steadfast support never wavering even during Sentinel Shield's most stressful periods. Our relationship deepened into something I'd never thought possible for someone like me, unconditional love based on who I truly was. Marry me, he proposed on a rainy Seattle evening, kneeling in our living room with a simple sapphire ring. Be my partner in everything, the way I want to be yours. I said yes through happy tears, the band sliding perfectly onto my finger. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere completely. 2 weeks after our engagement, I received the news about my grandmother Eleanor through a Facebook message from her neighbor in Vermont. She had passed peacefully in her sleep at 84. The message mentioned a memorial service I'd already missed. No one had thought to contact me directly. With shaking hands, I searched online for her obituary. There I was, listed among survivors. Granddaughter Brianna Miller of Seattle, an afterthought, included only for formality's sake. What struck me most was learning that my family had gathered without any attempt to include me in my own grandmother's farewell. That night, I cried in Jordan's arms, mourning not just Eleanor, but the family I'd never truly had. She was the only one who believed in me, I sobbed. And I couldn't even say goodbye. Then live in a way that honors her belief in you, Jordan said softly. That's the best goodbye. I took his words to heart, establishing the Eleanor Miller Scholarship for young women pursuing computer science, my way of extending the lifeline she had once offered me. Life settled into a fulfilling rhythm of work I loved and relationships that nourished me. I had created a chosen family of friends and colleagues who valued me for exactly who I was. At 37, Sentinel Shield was becoming a major player in cybersecurity, with offices in 3 cities and over 100 employees. I had everything I'd ever wanted, except closure with the past that still occasionally haunted my dreams. Then the elegant cream envelope arrived, bearing a return address from Greenwich, Connecticut. The invitation sat on my coffee table for 3 days before I could bring myself to open it. Its heavy cream paper and gold embossing screamed old money, the world I'd left behind. Finally, on a rainy Sunday morning with Jordan beside me for moral support, I slid my finger under the seal. Together with their families, Heather and Miller and Andrew James Thornton request the honor of your presence at their marriage ceremony. My sister was getting married. And somehow, after 10 years of silence, I had made the guest list. Are you okay? Jordan asked, his hand warm on my shoulder as I stared at the elaborate calligraphy. I don't know, I answered honestly. The invitation felt like a surreal connection to a life I'd almost convinced myself had been a bad dream. Why now? After all this time, that question haunted me through the following days. I carried the invitation to my next therapy session with Dr. Bailey, placing it on the small table between us like evidence in a trial. What does it mean to you that they've reached out now? She asked, her calm voice centering me as always. That's just it. I don't know if they're actually reaching out or if this is some sort of obligation. Maybe the groom's family insisted on inviting all relatives. I ran my fingers through my hair, a gesture that had become my tell for deep anxiety. Or maybe they've heard about my success, and suddenly I'm worth acknowledging. Dr. Bailey leaned forward slightly. What would it mean to you to attend? I hadn't allowed myself to fully consider that possibility. Closure, maybe? Or reopening old wounds? I honestly can't decide which is more likely. We spent the hour examining my options from every angle. By the end, I still hadn't made a decision, but I had clarity about what factors should guide it. Remember, Dr. Bailey said as our session concluded, attending or not attending are both valid choices. The important thing is that you make the decision from a place of strength, not from that wounded 18-year-old's perspective. Jordan, as always, offered his unconditional support. Whatever you decide, I'm with you, he promised over dinner that night. If you want to go, I'll be by your side. If you want to ignore it completely, I'll help you burn the invitation in dramatic fashion. That made me laugh, easing some of the tension that had knotted in my chest. I think I need to talk to someone else about this first. The next morning, I called Megan and James, the friends who had become my chosen siblings over the years. They arrived at my apartment that evening with wine and fierce protectiveness. Absolutely not, Megan declared immediately. These people threw you away. They don't deserve your presence at their perfect little society wedding. James was more measured. What do you want, Bree? Not what you think you should want, or what would make the best statement, but deep down, what feels right to you? His question cut through the noise in my head. I want to stop wondering. I want to look them in the eyes as the person I've become. Not for their validation, but for my own sense of completion. Then go, he said simply. But go on your terms. My curiosity got the better of me that night. After Megan and James left, I found myself searching online for information about Heather's fiancé. Andrew James Thornton III, as it turned out, was heir to Thornton Technologies, one of the largest data management firms on the East Coast. His father sat on the boards of multiple tech companies. The connection to my industry couldn't be coincidental. Do you think that's why they invited me? I asked Jordan as we lay in bed, my laptop illuminating our faces with Andrew's LinkedIn profile. Because of potential business connections? Jordan considered this. It's possible. But does the reason really matter? You'd be going for yourself, not for them. He was right, as usual. The why behind the invitation was less important than what attending might do for my own healing. Still, I hesitated. The thought of facing my parents after all this time sent waves of anxiety through me. I could almost hear my mother's critical voice, see my father's dismissive glance. Would they act like nothing had happened? Would they try to take credit for my success? Or worse, would they still see only the awkward, unattractive daughter they'd written off? The RSVP deadline loomed closer. I drafted and deleted a dozen responses, unable to commit either way. Then, 2 weeks before the final RSVP date, a message appeared in my professional email, the one listed on Sentinel Shield's website, not my personal contact. Brianna, I hope this reaches you. It's Heather. Please come to my wedding. There's so much I want to say to you. Call me if you're willing to talk before then. Her phone number followed. No explanation for 10 years of silence. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Just a request? Or was it a demand? For my presence. I took the email to my next session with Dr. Bailey. What strikes you most about her message? She asked after reading it. That she contacted me through my company email, not even trying my personal accounts first, I said immediately. And that there's no apology or even recognition that reaching out after a decade of silence might require some explanation. Dr. Bailey nodded. Those observations tell you something important. What boundaries would you need to set if you decide to attend? That question became my guide. Over the next week, I crafted a mental framework of boundaries, what I would and wouldn't accept, how I would respond to potential scenarios, when I would leave if necessary. Jordan and I role-played possible interactions. Brianna, you look different, he said, mimicking what might be my mother's backhanded compliment. Thank you. I practiced responding with serene confidence. Life in Seattle agrees with me. By the time I finally checked "will attend" on the RSVP card, I felt prepared, not for a happy family reunion, but for a controlled encounter on my terms. I added +1 next to my name, drawing strength from knowing Jordan would be with me. I chose not to call Heather before the wedding. Whatever she wanted to say could be said in person. I would give her that opportunity, but I wouldn't make it easy. As the wedding date approached, I prepared meticulously, selecting a dress that made me feel powerful, a deep emerald silk that complemented my now confident posture and the highlights in my styled hair. The woman in the mirror bore little resemblance to the girl who had fled Connecticut a decade earlier. The night before our flight to New York, Jordan found me standing on our balcony, staring at Seattle's skyline. "Second thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "No," I said, leaning into his embrace. "Just reminding myself who I am now. CEO. Innovator. Loved. Whatever happens tomorrow, they can't take any of that away from me." "No," he agreed, kissing my temple. "They absolutely cannot." As our plane took off the next morning, I felt a strange sense of peace. I was no longer running away from Greenwich. I was choosing to return on my own terms as the woman I had become despite them, not because of them. Whatever awaited me at the Westbrook Country Club, I was finally ready to face it. The Westbrook Country Club hadn't changed in the decade since I'd last seen it, still the epitome of old money New England with its manicured grounds and colonial architecture. As our taxi pulled up to the entrance, I felt an unexpected wave of calm. This place no longer intimidated me. It was simply a venue where I happened to have history. "Ready?" Jordan squeezed my hand, his steady presence anchoring me. "As I'll ever be," I replied, smoothing the emerald silk of my carefully chosen dress. The ceremony wasn't scheduled until 4, but we'd arrived early for the pre-wedding gathering, my deliberate choice to face my family in a more casual setting first. We followed the elegant signs directing guests to the garden terrace, where waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. The scene was exactly what I'd expected: Connecticut's elite in summer finery, air kisses exchanged between women with perfect highlights, men in linen blazers discussing the stock market. It was like stepping into a time capsule of my former life. What I hadn't anticipated was that no one would recognize me. "Are you friends of Andrew or Heather?" asked an elderly woman I distinctly remembered as my mother's bridge partner, Mrs. Ellison. "Family, actually," I replied with a smile that revealed nothing of my inner turmoil. "Oh!" "From which side?" she pressed, clearly trying to place me among the familiar Connecticut surnames. "The Miller side. I'm Brianna." I watched her face, waiting for recognition. Her expression remained politely blank. "How lovely. I don't believe Heather has mentioned you." Of course she hadn't. I'd been erased from the family narrative so completely that even those who had known me since childhood couldn't connect the confident woman before them with the awkward girl they'd dismissed. Jordan and I moved through the gathering, a strange sense of invisibility surrounding us. I overheard snippets of conversation about Heather's perfect match and the merger of two great families, because that's what this wedding really was, a merger, just as my parents had always planned. Then I saw them, my parents, standing near the stone balustrade overlooking the golf course. My mother, Catherine, still slender and blonde though with more obvious help from her stylist now. My father, Richard, his hair grayer but his posture still radiating authority. They were speaking with a couple I didn't recognize, champagne flutes in hand, the picture of WASP success. My heart hammered against my ribs as I approached them. Jordan's hand at the small of my back provided silent support. "Excuse me," I said, stepping into their conversation circle with practiced poise. My mother turned, her social smile firmly in place. "Yes, hello," she said pleasantly, with no flicker of recognition in her eyes. "It's been a long time," I said simply. Her expression remained blank for 3 more seconds before I saw it, the moment of realization dawning in her eyes. followed immediately by shock and something like fear. "Brianna," she whispered, the champagne flute trembling slightly in her hand. My father turned at the name, his practiced smile faltering as he took in my appearance. "My God," he murmured. "Surprise," I said with a calm I didn't entirely feel. "It's good to see you both. This is my fiancé, Jordan Reed." Jordan extended his hand with perfect composure. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Congratulations on your daughter's wedding day." My mother had recovered enough to shake his hand automatically, social training overriding shock. "Thank you," she managed. "If you'll excuse us, I need a private word with Brianna." The couple they'd been speaking with exchanged curious glances, but moved away tactfully. My father looked like he'd seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" My mother hissed once the others were out of earshot. "I was invited," I replied simply, pulling Heather's invitation from my clutch as evidence. Quite a surprise after 10 years of silence, but I thought it would be rude to decline. "You look different," my father said, his eyes scanning me as if trying to reconcile the woman before him with the daughter he'd rejected. 10 years will do that," I replied. "As will building a successful life on your own terms." My mother's eyes darted nervously around the gathering. "This isn't the time or place for whatever this is. Heather's wedding day should be perfect." "I couldn't agree more," I said with practiced ease. "I'm simply here as an invited guest to celebrate my sister's marriage. Nothing more, nothing less." "Brianna," my father began, his businessman's composure returning. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "There's nothing to discuss," I interrupted gently. "The time for that conversation was 10 years ago. Today, I'm just another wedding guest." I took Jordan's arm. "If you'll excuse us, we should mingle before the ceremony." As we walked away, I could feel their eyes boring into my back. The first hurdle had been cleared. I'd faced them without falling apart, without seeking their approval, without apologizing for my existence. The knot of anxiety in my chest began to loosen. "You were magnificent," Jordan whispered. The ceremony itself was predictably perfect. White roses everywhere, a string quartet playing classical pieces, Heather resplendent in a designer gown that probably cost more than my first year of college. I watched from the middle rows, deliberately choosing not to sit in the reserved family section, despite my technical right to be there. Heather was still beautiful, more polished now, with the slight hardness around her eyes that came from years in competitive social circles. She didn't see me during the ceremony, her focus entirely on her Princeton-educated, CO-in-waiting groom. The reception was held in the club's grand ballroom, transformed into a fairy tale of crystal and flowers. Jordan and I found our assigned table, far from the family tables, I noted without surprise, and made conversation with Andrew's distant cousins who seemed pleasant enough. I was returning from the restroom when it happened, the moment I came face to face with my sister for the first time in a decade. She was alone in the hallway, making her way back to the reception. Her step faltered when she saw me, her perfectly made-up face registering shock that she couldn't hide. "Brianna," she whispered, as if seeing an apparition. "Hello, Heather," I said calmly. "Congratulations. It was a beautiful ceremony." She stared at me, taking in my appearance, my poise, the confident woman who bore little resemblance to the sister she'd last seen. "You came," she finally said. "I wasn't sure you would. Your invitation was unexpected." Something flashed in her eyes, guilt, perhaps, or embarrassment. "You look amazing," she said, changing the subject in typical Heather fashion. "Really, transformed." "Life has a way of doing that," I replied. "Especially when you're forced to build it entirely on your own." She flinched slightly at that. "Brianna, there you are, darling." A handsome man in a perfectly tailored tuxedo approached, placing his hand on Heather's waist. "Andrew Thornton III, the groom himself. Your mother is looking for you. Something about photos with your grandparents." He noticed me then, offering a polite smile. "Hello there." "Andrew, this is," Heather began, but I extended my hand first. "Brianna Miller, It's a pleasure to meet you, Andrew. The ceremony was lovely. He shook my hand warmly. Thank you. You know Heather, he asked with genuine curiosity. The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Heather's eyes widened slightly, a silent plea I couldn't quite interpret. Actually, I said, meeting my sister's gaze directly, I'm her sister. Andrew's expression shifted to confusion. Sister? But Heather always said she was an only child. The moment crystallized around us, time seeming to stop in the quiet hallway. Heather's face drained of color beneath her makeup. Did she? I said softly. How interesting. There must be some misunderstanding, Heather said quickly. Brianna and we've been estranged for many years. It's complicated. Estranged? Andrew looked between us, genuine confusion on his face. I had no idea. There's a lot you don't know, apparently, I said, keeping my voice gentle despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. But today is your wedding day. This conversation can wait. Andrew, to his credit, seemed genuinely disturbed by this revelation. No, I want to understand. Why didn't you tell me you had a sister, Heather? Heather's perfect composure cracked slightly. It's a long story, Andrew. My family. We had a falling out with Brianna years ago. It was painful and I didn't talk about it. A falling out? I echoed, unable to let such a sanitized version stand. Is that what we're calling it when your parents disown you and tell you you're not worth investing in because you're the ugly duckling? Andrew's expression shifted from confusion to shock. What? Andrew, please, Heather pleaded. Not now. But the moment of revelation had its own momentum. More guests were entering the hallway, including my mother, who stopped short at the tableau before her. What's going on here? She asked, her social smile strained. I was just meeting Brianna, Andrew said, his voice carrying enough to draw attention from nearby guests. Heather's sister. The one I didn't know existed until this moment. A hush fell over the small crowd that had gathered. My mother's face paled visibly. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, she suggested, reaching for Andrew's arm. I think we should, he agreed, but not in the way she hoped. Heather, Brianna, would you both join me in the library? No. The club's library was a wood-paneled sanctuary of old books and leather chairs. Andrew closed the door behind us, creating an island of tense privacy amid the reception's distant music. Explain, he said simply, looking between Heather and me. Heather looked trapped, glancing toward the door as if contemplating escape. Andrew, it's our wedding day. Can't this wait? No, he said firmly. I just discovered my wife has a sister she never mentioned. A sister who claims she was disowned by your family. That's not a small detail, Heather. I stood quietly, allowing the moment to unfold without my intervention. This confrontation wasn't of my making. It wasn't like that, Heather finally said, voice small. Brianna left. She chose to cut ties with us. After being told I wasn't worth investing in, I added calmly. After years of being compared to you and found wanting. After being mocked for my appearance and interests instead of supported. That's not fair, Heather protested. You are always so sensitive about everything. Was I sensitive about overhearing you laugh with your friends about how unfortunate it was to have me as a sister? Was I sensitive about Dad calling me the family's ugly duckling? Or about Mom suggesting community college because my Stanford acceptance wasn't worth the investment? Andrew's expression darkened with each question. Is this true, Heather? She couldn't meet his eyes. You don't understand how it was. Brianna was different, difficult. She didn't fit in. Because I didn't meet your beauty standards? I asked quietly. Because I was interested in computer science instead of social climbing? Because you made everything so hard. Heather burst out, years of defensive justification breaking through. You could have tried harder to fit in, to be like the rest of us. Instead, you judged us all for caring about appearances and connections while benefiting from the privilege they provided. I was 18, Heather. A child seeking my family's love and support. And now look at you, she said, gesturing to my polished appearance. You clearly figured it out eventually. You're successful, beautiful by conventional standards now. You didn't need us after all. That's not the point, Andrew interjected, his voice tight with controlled anger. The point is you lied to me. By omission, but still a lie, about something fundamental, your own sister. The door opened then, my father entering with an artificial smile that didn't reach his eyes. Everything all right in here? Guests are asking for the bride and groom. No, Richard, everything is not all right, Andrew said, using my father's first name with new coldness. I've just learned some disturbing things about how your family operates. My father's facade slipped momentarily before he recovered. Family matters can be complex, Andrew. But today is about celebrating your union with Heather, not relitigating old disagreements. Is that what you call disowning your daughter? An old disagreement? Andrew asked. The library door opened again, this time revealing Jordan and Andrew's father, James Thornton II, a distinguished man with silver hair and shrewd eyes. Everything all right, son? The elder Thornton asked, taking in the tense scene. Actually, no, Andrew replied. I've just discovered that my wife has a sister she never mentioned, Brianna Miller. Apparently, the family disowned her years ago. James Thornton's eyebrows rose slightly. Brianna Miller of Sentinel Shield? The question hung in the air for a moment before I answered. Yes, that's me. Recognition dawned in his eyes. Your predictive security algorithms are revolutionizing the industry. We've been following your company's progress with great interest. My father's expression shifted from dismissive to calculating so quickly it would have been comical in another context. Brianna has done quite well for herself, he said, as if he'd supported me all along. Without any help from you, Jordan noted, speaking for the first time since entering. In fact, despite your active hindrance. Young man, you don't understand family dynamics, my father began. I understand human decency, Jordan interrupted. And from what Brianna has shared, and what I'm witnessing now, that seems in short supply in your family. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. James Thornton looked between his son and the Millers with growing concern. Andrew, he said carefully, there are 200 guests waiting. Whatever the situation is, perhaps it can be addressed after the reception. Andrew turned to me, his expression troubled but respectful. Brianna, I apologize for my role in this uncomfortable situation. I had no idea about any of this. You have nothing to apologize for, I assured him. This isn't your burden to bear. He nodded, then turned to Heather. We'll return to the reception because it's the responsible thing to do. But afterward, we need to have a serious conversation about honesty and values. Heather's perfect wedding day expression had crumbled entirely. She nodded mutely, tears threatening to spill. As everyone prepared to return to the reception, my mother approached me, her voice low. Was this your plan all along? To ruin Heather's wedding day with ancient history? I met her gaze steadily. No, Mother. I came because I was invited, against my better judgment. The truth emerging isn't my fault. It's the consequence of years of lies and erasure. You've changed, she said, her eyes assessing me in that calculating way I remembered so well. Yes, I agreed. I have, but not in the ways you think. My worth didn't increase with my success or appearance. It was always there. You just couldn't see it. Jordan and I returned to the reception, where we stayed for another hour, long enough to be polite, but not so long as to prolong the discomfort. As we prepared to leave, Heather found me near the coat check. You couldn't just let me have this day, could you? She asked, voice trembling with emotion. I didn't come to disrupt your wedding, Heather. I came because after 10 years, I thought maybe there was a chance for reconciliation. I should have known better. So this is my fault too? Like everything always was? No, I said gently. But it's not mine either. The truth was always going to come out eventually. I'm sorry it happened today, but I didn't engineer that moment. She was quiet for a moment, vulnerability breaking through her perfect bride facade. He's so angry with me, she whispered. He values honesty. That's not a character flaw. What happens now? She asked, suddenly sounding like the little sister I'd once known. That depends on you, I said, and on whether there's anything real left between us to salvage. I handed her my business card with my personal number written on the back. If you want to talk, really talk, call me. But only if you're ready to be honest about the past. As Jordan and I left the Westbrook Country Club, I felt lighter somehow, as if putting the truth into the open air had released a weight I'd carried for a decade. Whether anything would come of this confrontation remained to be seen, but for the first time, I had faced my family on my own terms, not as the rejected ugly duckling, but as the woman I had fought to become. Our hotel room felt like a sanctuary after the emotional intensity of the wedding. I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the bed, mentally and physically exhausted. You were incredible today, Jordan said, loosening his tie. How are you feeling? I stared at the ceiling, taking inventory of my emotions. Strangely, peaceful, I finally answered. Not the closure I expected, but a kind of release. Like I've been holding my breath for 10 years and finally exhaled. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in weeks, as if confronting my past had quieted some restless part of my subconscious. We flew back to Seattle the next morning, returning to our normal lives, or so I thought. 3 days after the wedding, my phone rang with an unfamiliar Connecticut number. I answered cautiously. Brianna? It's Heather. Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered, lacking the confidence that had always been her hallmark. Hello, Heather, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Can we talk? Really talk, like you said. The vulnerability in her voice surprised me. Thus began a series of conversations that gradually rebuilt the bridge between us, not to what it had been in childhood, but to something new and cautiously authentic. Heather revealed that her perfect life had its own prison of expectations and appearances. Andrew had insisted on couples therapy after the wedding revelation, forcing her to confront truths she'd spent years avoiding. I was jealous of you, she admitted during our third call, the confession clearly difficult for her. Everyone thought I had everything because I was pretty and popular, but you had this brilliant mind and inner strength. You didn't need their approval the way I did. I would have traded my brilliant mind for their love in a heartbeat back then, I told her honestly. I know. That's part of what I have to live with now. Andrew, it turned out, had been raised with very different values than the Millers despite his similar socioeconomic background. His parents had emphasized integrity and personal achievement over appearances. The revelation about how the Millers had treated me had shaken his faith in the family he'd married into. My parents were a different story. My mother called once, her approach typically strategic. Your father and I have been thinking, she began without preamble. We should have dinner when you're next in Connecticut. Your company has made quite a name for itself. Is that why you want to reconnect, Mother? Because I'm successful now. I asked directly. The pause before her answer told me everything. We're proud of what you've accomplished, she said, evading the question. I'm not interested in a relationship based on what I've achieved rather than who I am, I told her. If you want to be part of my life, you need to acknowledge what happened and take responsibility for your part in it. The past is the past, Brianna. Dwelling on old hurts is unproductive. Accountability isn't dwelling. It's the foundation of any healthy relationship. We reached an impasse there. My father never called at all, though I heard through Heather that he'd been following Sentinel Shield's stock with great interest. I established clear boundaries with both parents. I would engage with them only to the extent that they respected my terms. This meant limited contact with my mother and virtually none with my father, who couldn't bring himself to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Sentinel Shield continued to thrive. Our security platform expanded into international markets, and industry leaders began citing my algorithms as the new gold standard. The company grew to over 200 employees, with offices in Seattle, Boston, and London. Professional success was gratifying, but the personal growth of the past year felt even more significant. Working with Dr. Bailey, I finally internalized the truth that had taken me so long to realize. My worth had never been contingent on my family's approval or my physical appearance. It had been within me all along, waiting to be recognized and nurtured. 6 months after the wedding, I established the Eleanor Miller Foundation, dedicated to supporting young women pursuing careers in STEM fields. The foundation offered not just financial assistance, but mentorship and emotional support, the combination I wished I'd had at 18. Your grandmother would be so proud, Jordan said at the foundation's launch event, squeezing my hand as I prepared to address the crowd of donors and first-year scholarship recipients. Looking out at the young women who reminded me so much of my younger self, brilliant, passionate, some still struggling with confidence, I felt my grandmother's presence strongly. Success isn't measured by how you look or who approves of you, I told them during my speech. It's built day by day, choice by choice, as you honor your authentic self and the gifts you alone can bring to the world. 1 year after that fateful wedding, Heather came to visit me in Seattle, alone, her first trip without Andrew or the protective bubble of family. We walked along the waterfront, the space between us filled with years of unspoken truths now cautiously voiced. I'm trying to figure out who I am apart from being the pretty one or the perfect daughter, she confessed. It's terrifying. You've had a decade of practice at being your authentic self. I'm just starting. It's never too late to begin, I told her. The hardest part is taking that first step away from others' expectations. Our relationship would never be the uncomplicated sisterhood of childhood dreams, but it had evolved into something honest, a connection between two adult women with shared history and separate paths, finding common ground in their imperfect journey. My journey from rejected family member to self-assured woman hadn't followed a fairy tale trajectory. There was no moment where my parents suddenly recognized their mistakes and embraced me with open arms. Real life rarely offers such neat resolutions. Instead, I'd found something more valuable, the ability to define family on my own terms, to create connections based on mutual respect and authentic acceptance. The little girl who had once desperately sought her parents' approval now understood that the most important approval had always been her own. The woman who had fled Connecticut with nothing but a suitcase and determination had built not just a successful company, but a meaningful life filled with people who valued her complete self. You know what I've realized? I said to Jordan one evening as we sat on our balcony, watching the sunset paint Seattle's skyline in gold and pink. For years, I was waiting for them to realize they were wrong about me, to validate that I was worthy after all. But that was never the point. What was the point? He asked, genuinely curious. That I never needed their validation in the first place. My worth wasn't something they could give or take away. It was always mine. I just needed to claim it for myself. Looking back at the long road from that painful family dinner 10 years ago to the life I'd built, I felt profound gratitude for every struggle that had shaped me. Each rejection had pushed me towards self-reliance. Each obstacle had built resilience. Each moment of loneliness had taught me to create genuine connection. The true transformation hadn't been from ugly duckling to successful entrepreneur. It had been from a girl who measured her value through others' eyes to a woman who recognized her inherent worth and lived accordingly. I often think about that moment in the country club hallway when Andrew asked, "You know her?" And I replied, "I'm her sister." The simple truth had power not because it disrupted Heather's perfect day, but because it affirmed my rightful place in my own story, a place no one could erase or deny any longer. What defines family? Is it blood connection? Shared history? Or is it something deeper, the choice to see and honor one another's authentic selves? I've learned it's the latter. My chosen family, Jordan, my friends, mentors, and colleagues who've supported me, embodies what family should be. And if blood relatives want to be part of that circle, they're welcome, but only if they can participate with the same authenticity and respect. Have you ever had to redefine family in your own life? What boundaries have you created to protect your sense of self-worth? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button to join our community of resilient souls building lives on their own terms. Remember, your worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it. It's affirmed by your courage to live authentically despite them. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and until next time, hold your head high and know that you are enough, exactly as you are.